What if I told you your chord changes aren't slow because of your fingers? They're slow because of a habit your brain built without you knowing. And once you break that habit, your chord changes can clean up in a few days, even if they feel impossible right now. If you stick with me for the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to stop that tiny freeze up that happens right before you switch chords. You'll also see why your chord changes feel messy even when you know the shape you're on and the shape you're going to, and how a small shift in the way you practice can make those switches feel smooth, automatic, and effortless. But if you skip this part and say, I got this, usually what happens is you keep repeating the same movements over and over again incorrectly, which your brain memorizes instead. And once a bad habit gets locked in, it's a lot harder to undo later. So in this video, I'll show you what's actually going on with your chord changes, how to fix it with a practice method that builds accuracy fast, and a hack from an unexpected place that keeps your playing flowing, even when you're still learning the chords. First, what's actually happening in your hands when you try to switch chords? Back in the early 1900s, researchers studying motor skills noticed that when you learn a brand new movement, whether it's typing, swimming, playing an instrument, your brain builds that skill in slow, slightly messy layers, long before it ever becomes fast and automatic. In the beginning, your brain doesn't treat chord changes as one single motion yet. It treats them as multiple separate decisions that your fingers have to make every time you switch from chord to chord. Once the brain recognizes the movement as a single unified shape, everything speeds up. That's when your fingers start to jump into the next chord shape without hesitation. And you don't have to wait weeks or months for that shortcut to appear either. The techniques you're about to learn speed up that wiring process in your brain dramatically. Before I show this first exercise to you, I want you to understand how I look at these. In my experience, almost all exercises on the guitar fall neatly onto a line of mentally difficult but gets efficient results, or mentally easy but is slow to get the desired result. The first exercise we're going to do is on the mentally difficult side. But if you can make it through this exercise, you'll never have to worry about your chord changes again, and the problem will disappear like that. When you're switching chords and your fingers keep landing at different times onto the fretboard, it means that your brain hasn't chunked together all of the pieces of information that are involved in moving into that chord as a single movement. So let's fix that. A lot of exercises on the guitar don't have proper names, so I like to name them based on what the movement looks like so that it's easy for people to remember. This one is my favorite drill for practicing chords, and I call it all fingers off and all fingers on. And it works because your brain memorizes the movements of the chord independent of the song that you're learning on, so you can pull that information from your brain for any song that you're playing, not just the one you're working on right now. First, this exercise actually starts away from the guitar. You're going to hold your hand up in the air in the shape of a chord. Any one that gives you a hard time will work, but for this example, let's say that you're holding up a C chord. Then you're going to throw all of your fingers out. That's the all the fingers off. Now, bring your fingers in and form the chord again. That's the all the fingers on. Start by practicing this slowly just to teach your fingers what the motion is and what to do. If you'd like, you can try and increase the speed as well. When you're increasing the speed, try to do it as one fluid motion. Don't work any hesitation into your fingers, just single, all the way out, fingers curled all the way in, all the way out, all the way in. Then try it on your guitar. Fret the whole chord in one motion, lift your whole hand off the guitar, then land back in the chord shape. Your goal here is simple. All of the fingers landing on the strings at the same time. In the beginning, move in slow, fluid motions. You want accuracy first and speed later. If one of your fingers is hesitating or keeps drifting off of the target, slow things down even more and focus all of your attention on that finger moving with the rest of your hand. And if you tried that and you're thinking, but my finger still isn't cooperating, move even slower. Try doing 10 of these slowly. If you get less, you're probably moving your hand too fast. Gradually start to add speed to the drop, and eventually these landings will get so quick that your fingers will look almost blurry. If you can blink and barely catch the movement, or you can be talking to a camera and dropping into these chords effortlessly, your chord drops are becoming automatic. Over in the middle of difficulty versus brain power, we have not moving more than you have to, which sounds easy because it's not moving, but you'd be surprised. Most messy chord changes happen from fingers moving where they're not supposed to be. Sometimes they don't even need to move at all. This second technique involves looking at all of the shapes of your chords in advance and finding notes in common. The idea is that if you have a note in common across a chord, you can use the same finger for that note, allowing you to anchor your hand to the fretboard. If your hand is anchored, it's more stable, and with a bit of practice, your fingers will make chord changes happen faster. Let's try this out with a song like Wildflower by Billie Eilish. There are 3 chords in this song: C major 7, B minor 7, and E minor. If you were to take the chord charts for these as is, you can see that between the B minor 7 and the E minor, you can leave finger 1 down on the A string in the 2nd fret. To speed up this chord change, you'd leave this note in common pressed down. But between C major 7 and B minor 7, or from E minor back to C major 7, there's nothing in common, unless you change which fingers you're using for the chord. If we use fingers 2 and 3 for the C major 7, then you can keep finger 1 down on the A string in the 2nd fret for the switch from C major 7 to B minor 7, making the change smoother. And once you're in your E minor, you can keep the 2nd finger down to smooth out the change from E minor to C major 7. The reason this works so well is when one finger stays planted, your hand can only travel away from the guitar neck as far as your finger lets it. When you keep your hand close to the neck, your chord changes speed up. If the first exercise was mentally difficult and fast acting, and the second one was in between, this one is the opposite. It's simple, but it takes some repetitions because it addresses something that most beginners aren't even aware is a problem. Sometimes your fret hand technique can be flawless, but your chord changes will still be messy. And the reason for this is your strumming hand is stopping during the changes. Music by definition is organized sound. Without rhythm, it's just noise. So the fix is, keep the strumming hand going, even if your fret hand is still moving. And I know that sounds wrong. But Troy, I'm going to play open strings. Those aren't part of the chord. My chord changes aren't fast enough yet. Yes, you're going to play open strings, and that's where I'm going with this. If the rhythm stays steady, those open strings blend in way better than you think. And if you hit them quietly, they'll even sound intentional. If you want examples of guitarists doing this, listen closely to What's Up by Four Non Blondes, Zombie by the Cranberries, or About a Girl by Nirvana. To try this, start a simple strumming pattern. Something like down, down, up, at a slow, steady tempo with, say, E and G. When it's time to change chords, keep your picking hand moving even if your fret hand hasn't fully landed in the next chord yet. Let that last up strum be entirely open strings to give yourself time to drop into the next chord. But when you strum the open strings, try to strum quietly. For the most part, this is what will blend it in and make it part of the song. Though there are examples of loud open strings working really well, like in Smells Like Teen Spirit. As long as you treat these open strings as intentional parts of the music, the rhythm never breaks, and your chord changes sound amazing, even if they need that extra moment of time to land. For all three of these techniques, remember to start slow. If your fingers aren't moving how you want them to, or you keep landing on the wrong string, drop the tempo. Focus on accuracy, and speed will come with time. Visualizing chord changes before you touch the guitar will shave a ton of time off of your chord changes. I covered the science behind this recently in a video on memorization, but the gist of it is, your brain can't tell the difference between what you make up in your head and reality. So, when you're looking at the chord shapes, picture a version of you that can play the song perfectly in your head. All of the chord shapes, all of the changes happening effortlessly. When you start making the chord changes on your guitar, the brain will treat this version of you that you have in your head as the blueprint for how changes are supposed to go. The next best practice is to practice the tough pairs first. We have the most willpower when we start our practice sessions, so if G to D is fine but G to C collapses every time you do it, practice G to C at the beginning of your practice time each day. And speaking of practice time, 5 minutes of focused practice with nothing but you and your guitar beats an hour of distracted noodling where you're checking your phone in between run-throughs. That task switching that happens when you get distracted while you're practicing is one of the biggest things that slows down progress for new guitarists. To eliminate that task switching entirely, there's a simple way to practice that makes every minute count, even if you barely have time to play. And if you've ever thought, I want to improve, but I barely have 10 to 15 minutes a day, the good news is that's more than enough. Click right here to watch how to practice guitar even with no time, and I'll show you how to build a short, focused practice routine that fits into real life and still gives you reliable progress every single day.